Thank you, Kayla.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, colleagues. It's March 1st. We have several bills today. This will be short. I think we have no more than 15 individuals testifying in total. So if we can get started with Delegate Weibel, House Bill 1297.
Okay, now this is
Is that
Hold on, let me mute Delegate Brooks. There we go.
this is
that's
And
ECM?
he's unmuted. Is Delegate Weibel here? All right, since we're going here, we'll come back to him. Let's go next to Delegate Cox. Delegate Cox. This may be a much shorter set of hearings than we first planned. Outstanding.
Keep it moving.
Keep it moving. Delegate Kittleman.
She's not in here as well, Mr. Chair. I'm looking, I believe I see Delegate McComas though.
I heard Delegate McComas, so I guess we will go there. Otherwise, we are about done, colleagues. Delegate McComas. Delegate McComas, I do believe I heard you. Are you still here?
She's,
She's there. She's muted.
and her camera's off.
Um,
And Charcudian is not in.
Unmute and turn your camera on. She's been here 20 years, Mr. Chairman. You have to, still trying to figure out how to use these computers.
Move to adjourn.
right? It looks like we're- Oh, boy. All righty then. I'm not sure if Delegate McComas is actually at her station. We will go on to our last bill of the day. No, we will obviously come back around to these colleagues, which is going to be Delegate Charcudian.
She's not here, Mr. Chair.
Are we doing this for real?
Oh, Lord.
Mr.
All right,
Chairman, we are kinder and gentler ECM, remember?
You need to put your Mr. Rogers sweater back on.
Clearly I do. So,
Hey,
my
Mr. Chair, if you
Republican
want, Mr. Chair, if you want, you can call on Diana Ross. She's ready.
it sounds like that's what we're going to have to do. Colleagues, to any of my Republican colleagues, if you have the numbers, if you could reach out to either Delegate Weibel, Cox, Kittleman, or
Mr. Chair,
McComas, that would be wonderful.
Delegate Kittleman is signing in. She should be in right now.
And we are obviously very enthused that people are signing in whenever they choose to.
We can move favorable.
Yeah, that's probably what we won't do. But what we could do is at least give them a hearing. I'm trying to. And Delegate Ahrens, I've got to compliment you on your new camera. It puts you in a wonderful light. I don't know if it's like the Betty Davis thing with the Vaseline over the lens, but please don't change a thing.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. How about now?
Oh,
Ah,
man, so much better before. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
I just spoke to Delegate Weibel.
Ms.
and
Kittleman, Delegate Kittleman's on, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Kittleman, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Outstanding. We start at 1 p.m. Trying to get everybody in that can get in. You are obviously the only one here at this point. House Bill 977. Are you ready to present?
I am. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you all. I think this is the first time that I have appeared before the Economic Matters Committee, even though I am very interested in all the topics that you do. I feel a little bit that I haven't done a very good job because when my husband was in the legislature for 22 years, I believe he put in every year a bill to repeal prevailing wage. And it has taken me this long to do anything. The bill that I have proposed doesn't do that, but it does put a moratorium on requiring the prevailing wage in building schools for a period of 5 years. This state is behind in getting schools built. We have done wonders using the Maryland Stadium Authority for Baltimore schools, a 21st century plan, and now we're using the Stadium Authority to build schools in other jurisdictions. But there are far more schools that are needed than are that we can pay for right now, and I think that doing this would be a boon to get our schools up to where they should be, and I think that's why 5 years ought to work. I have 3 points I want to make. First is December 2020, the IAC, Interagency on School Construction, issued a report that it had been asked to do on the prevailing wage. It was a very good report. I commend you to it. I suspect many of your members have already read it. They were able to get a very good comparison on the difference in cost between contracts with prevailing wage requirements and those without, because they were able to look at 9 projects where the bidders had bid both with prevailing wage and without. So the results of their comparisons is that there was a premium 9.7% up to 15.8% for the prevailing wage contracts, with an average of 12.3% additional cost. The average difference in dollars was a little over 11 million per contract. They also did a survey of contractors, both general and subs. And it was interesting, over 60% that prevailing wage is an important factor when they decided on bidding on jobs. Over 96% believed that prevailing wage produced higher costs, which I would think is a given. And there was also a firm disagreement that achieved higher quality, greater efficiency, or greater safety with prevailing wage. And the second thing I wanted to address was sorry, this is my internet connection is unstable. I hope it lasts. The original purpose of the prevailing wage when it came into being in the early 1990s was twofold. One was to maintain a family wage, and the second one was to protect contractors from government's monopolistic power as a purchaser of construction labor. Looking at the second one, I think that's very interesting. I suspect that because government issued so many contracts without a prevailing wage, the contractors would, trying to bid low, would take a lot away from the wages that they would pay, which made sense. That is no longer, because maintaining a family wage is no longer an issue. We have the minimum wage going up around. We also have collective bargaining, which this legislature extends every year. There were 6 bills extending it in our last year. And the third point is that the legislature really does continue to expand the reach. And I think that what has been done in the arena of schools is most telling. I recall that originally when I became interested, the schools were required to have prevailing wage contracts if the state supplied 75% or more of the cost of the project. Howard County used that to great advantage because we could afford to build schools and not have to pay the extra premium. We then changed that to 50%. States had 50% of the contract. And then, and particularly last year, we changed it so that if the state paid 25% or more of the contract, you had to have prevailing wage. And at the same time, I think for schools, they did this earlier, but for all contracts, last year we passed a bill saying instead of having to be over $500,000, we would apply the prevailing wage to any contract over $250,000. So we keep expanding it. And the thing that I was going to talk a little bit about we have 3 bills in this session to expand the prevailing wage. One to mechanical system services. There's a bill to tighten controls, allowing the government to do a stop work order if a prevailing wage is if a contractor's in violation. And then there's a bill that applies it to University of Maryland, Morgan State, and St. Mary's County. We also expanded collective bargaining. So we are applying this to more and more entities. And I always ask, what is the problem we're trying to solve? And I don't know that from my perspective, there is a problem. And second, how do we weigh this expense to the state, which is measurable, to all of the other things that we want to do, and some of which are a lot of people that we take care of. For me, the big one is the salaries that we pay to social workers who work for the state has been an issue, and not only social workers, but people who work in prisons, who are the guards, and a number of other types of positions that really need to be compensated at a rate that is enticing them to stay on and paying them for what they actually do, which is a lot. So anyway, that is my reason that I would like to ask for a favorable vote on my bill.
Thank you very much, Delegate. All right, I see we have a few people signed up unfavorable. Okay, so we'll start with Jeff Guido.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, and committee members. Jeff Guido with the Baltimore DC Building Trades Council. We're opposed to House Bill 977. Prevailing wage is not a ceiling. It's a floor. It's the minimum wage paid for that craft. Prevailing wage actually came into being back in the 1930s as the Davis-Bacon Act to prevent injurious competition from coming in from out of state and taking work from the local craftsmen. That's the purpose of prevailing wage. It is not tied to collective bargaining. And many times the prevailing wage is behind that wage rate when it comes to paying what they get. Prevailing wage promotes apprenticeship training in Maryland. As the building trades, our local unions, along with our contractors, joint apprenticeship training committees, spend $26 million annually, unsupported by the state. That is our own money that we put into that through our negotiated wages on apprenticeship trainings. Apprenticeship scholarships is what they are, but there's no cost to the apprentice. And a 5-year moratorium is the length of an apprenticeship. Maryland's the wealthiest state in the country, at $84,805. Howard County is the wealthiest county within that state at $121,000 median income. The Cato Institute, which is a right-wing think tank, shows Maryland is going to have a $4.6 billion surplus with an estimated or expected $1.9 billion surplus for each year for the next 5 years. The moratorium on school construction, I think, has nothing to do with school construction costs and everything to do with contractors don't want to pay the wages and fringe benefits. And we asked the committee for an unfavorable vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Jason Asher.
Mr. Chair, I believe everybody else is written.
I apologize. That would end this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll go on to the next hearing. Delegate White.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Were there any questions?
Delegate Pippi.
Delegate Pitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a question to Delegate Kittleman. Delegate, so I'm in Frederick, and one of the big issues that we've had is, and I know your bill is very narrow and it's specific to school construction. The schools in our county are just outrageous. So to build a new school in Frederick County, it's like $100 million. And what most people may or may not know is that our property taxes go straight towards, the school board and school construction. So 51% of our property taxes in Frederick County go directly to projects like building a high school or middle school or elementary school. And so, we're talking about the prevailing wage. There is no question that the prevailing wage has an increase in cost to these projects. And, so I don't know if you've looked outside of Howard County to any other counties, any specific projects, but if you could maybe cite any specific increase in cost, because the materials, although they go up in value too, the cost of labor is a significant portion of building a school. It's probably 1/3 the cost. And so I don't know if you could just very, very briefly, because I know we're out of time, but just if there's any specific projects that you know of where the cost of the school has gone up $10, $20 million because of the prevailing wage.
Actually, no, but I mean, it has. And the study that the IAC did, I think, is very recent and very concrete proof of the cost increases, and it is countywide.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. No further questions. Move on to the next bill. Delegate Weigel.
Thank you, Chairman Wilson. Good to see you. Good afternoon, honorable members of the Economic Matters Committee. I am Delegate Weigel here to present House Bill 1297. I do apologize for being late to the meeting. The bill is in the same format as House Bill 1045, which was introduced in the 2021 legislative session. Although not drafted in a specific response to COVID-19 and the resulting vaccination requirements, this bill does seek to address that issue as well as other medical issues in general. The bill seeks to protect employee confidentiality of their medical records and procedures and keep employers out of such confidential matters that have no material impact on the employer or the employee's ability to perform the functions of their job. It seems that during the pandemic, the confidentiality of employee health records and their privacy in regards to medical procedures has been eroded. Very simply, House Bill 1297 seeks to reaffirm an employee's confidentiality of their medical records and restricts an employer from retaliation for their desire to do so. It's a very simple bill, and I ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Obviously, you have no witnesses testifying on your bill, sir. Thank you for your presentation.
Yep. Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Next, we will go to Delegate Cox.
Again, Mr. Chair, I don't see him in the weight room.
Good boy. It's gonna be one of these days, guys. Delegate McComas, is she here now?
She is in the weight room.
I
I'll
saw
ask
her. I just don't know if she's
Further questions for the panel?
up. There's Delegate McComas.
Can you get me in?
Yes,
I'm here.
we're waiting. We've called your bill twice, Delegate. All right. Well, I'm not sure what the confusion is, so I will patiently circle back around at another time for this bill. Delegate Cox is not shown. Is Delegate Charkoudian here yet?
I'm here, Mr. Chair.
Bill here.
I apologize.
I'm here, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Delegate Charkoudian. Do you want me to go?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize. I had been assigned to go to E&T because we're second on a bill there. I didn't realize my bill would be called so early here. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair. For the record, it's Delegate Lori Charkoudian here asking for a favorable report on House Bill 955. I think that we all have experienced our constituents suffering over the last 2 years as a result of problematic processing within the unemployment insurance system. Fortunately, many issues have been resolved, but far too many issues remain. I have worked collaboratively with the Secretary of Labor trying to see what issues we can fix without legislation. And I present to you today one of the issues that we really have not been able to fix and that remains a significant problem. If you talk to your staff about the issues that they're still hearing about, you'll probably hear about unemployment insurance overpayment notices. What has been happening with the overpayment notices is this: our constituents are receiving overpayment notices saying they owe huge amounts of money based on a redetermination notice, but they never had a chance to weigh in on the redetermination itself. By the time they receive the overpayment notice, it's too late for them to present their own evidence on the issues in the redetermination. And now they owe the money, even if had they had an opportunity to participate in the redetermination hearing, there might have been a different kind of an outcome. Now, as it turns out, not only is this wrong and a violation of our constituents' due process, but it also is inconsistent with federal guidance and federal U.S. Department of Labor guidance to our state on how they should be processing the redetermination and the overpayments. So what my bill does is pretty straightforward. It takes the federal guidance on redetermination and overpayment, it puts it into Maryland law,
And it says that the Maryland Department of Labor cannot collect on overpayment notices unless they follow the steps that are in essentially the federal requirements. So that's what the bill does. The second thing it does is it makes sure that the notice that our constituents are receiving, that they actually receive it. Right now, a lot of the notices they're receiving around these issues, and part of why they don't have a chance to weigh in on the decision making, is because they're buried somewhere in Beacon. And so my bill brings that to either an email or written notification. Now, both of those things should be pretty straightforward. It's about protecting due process for our constituents. I will say I had a conversation with the secretary a month ago about this bill. I sent her a copy of it. I had hoped that if she had any concerns, if the department had concerns, they would have reached out and we could have talked about it. I never heard back from them. However, they did raise concerns in the letter that they submitted, which I didn't get until we all got it. I think the issues they raise can actually be resolved relatively easily. And I won't go, if people have questions about the details of how I think they can be resolved, I'm happy to share that. But otherwise, I'll just work with them and see if we can address those issues. On my panel, I have a few people who have experienced getting these overpayment notices, never having had a chance to weigh in on the decision making with due process. So you'll hear from them, as well as folks from Legal Aid and Public Justice Center who have represented people in these situations. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're muted, Mr. Chair.
I believe we have a question from Delegate Arentz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Charkunian, I started trying to read through the penalty clause of this. Could you elaborate on that a little bit for me? Let me just rephrase the question a little bit. If they're found to be, if the overpayments are legitimate, and I see that there's some penalties that if they're fined, the penalties coming in, are we trying to recoup the money we spent on this, or are we just trying to make it a reasonable amount?
No, this doesn't change the recouping or the penalties or interest rates or any of that.
But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's.
I'm not really getting the right question on it. I think if they aren't due the money back, and I think in the letter you get from the department, it states that, yeah, this makes some sense. It's going to take time and money to do all this. I have a bill that I put in it. It's about the fraud, collection of fraud and all that stuff. And I think that we need to apply the same rules for when the state's at fault to when the same rules should apply to people who committed fraud, who aren't due something that for whatever reason. So I'm just trying to even this out and see if my bill makes sense.
Well, I don't know if your bill makes sense because I don't think that I've had a chance to look at it yet, but I'm happy to meet with you and talk about that.
Okay. But
your question about this bill, really what this bill does, and it's one of those bills that I feel like we shouldn't have to do, but what this bill does is it says you should be following the federal guidance, and I can get you the letter of the federal guidance. I can reference all that. You should be following the federal guidance that before you go take money back, people have to have a shot at telling you why they think the reasoning is wrong. So now if that's fraud, they're not going to get, the letter's not going to get to somebody. They're not going to have a chance to weigh in. And so if it's actual legitimate fraud, this is going to be irrelevant. But for the cases where a redetermination is made based on some piece of information that didn't get, brought into the mix, or some challenge from an employer, this is going to give the employee, the customer, a chance to weigh in and say, oh, that information didn't come from the employer. Let me get that. Here it is, right? They're going to get a chance to fix that before money starts getting taken back from them. Right now, they're not getting that chance because they're not even knowing that conversation is happening until after the decision's been made, and then they get an overpayment notice, and then it's too late. Okay. So the fraud, in the case of fraud, there's not going to be anyone weighing in to make the case. So those cases will continue to go as they're going. The legitimate cases of our constituents who have a case to be made, a due process case to be made, will have that opportunity. Now, they may or may not win, but they'll have the opportunity. Right now, they don't have that opportunity. And the opportunity that my bill gives them is exactly the same as what the federal guidance from the US Department of Labor tells the Maryland Department of Labor it should be doing.
I guess my concern comes in, well, if the claimant didn't provide something they should have provided, the state can be penalized for that because of the dollars and cents. So they'll be coming back to the state for those dollars. Subsequently, if the employer didn't provide the information, that isn't the state's fault, nor is it the claimant's fault, but yet we're still looking at dollars and cents. And I'm wondering how that's all going to be washed out in this bill. I understand your intent. Your intent makes sense if we don't give people a chance to have what they've earned and get back what they deserve. But I think the unintended consequence is the state could get caught up in something that an employer didn't do it or should have done, and vice versa.
Potentially,
Yeah.
but in that case, what if that's a problem, then what you would be saying is that the US Department of Labor has it wrong. Because this is taking the US Department of Labor's guidance, which I think make a lot of sense, and saying you got to do it in the state or you can't collect the overpayment. And so if you think that offering these steps before taking the money back is wrong, then that's really an issue that you have with the US Department of Labor, because they're the ones who set this guidance.
Okay, just trying to clear up my brain. Thanks.
Yep, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Cassandra Kemp.
Yes, I'm here.
Please go ahead, ma'am.
Dear Chair Wilson, Vice Chair Crosby, and members of the Economic Matters Committee, my name is Cassandra Kemp. I'm here to request a favorable report on HB 955. I am a retiree, have a son, 3 grandchildren, and I am the primary caretaker for my 101-year-old mother who suffered a stroke. I'm here to tell you the unemployment insurance system is broken. Please refer to my written testimony for more details of my story. I worked at the Half Note Lounge as a second career until it closed due to COVID. The owner instructed staff members to apply for unemployment. In June 2020, I received a debit card and was instructed to set up a Beacon account. I received payments from June until November of 2020. Once the payment stopped, I assumed I had received all that I was entitled to until I received a call from the unemployment office indicating that there was a problem with my classification. They told me to ignore the overpayment message that appeared in the Beacon. She said it would take a couple of weeks to fix. I logged in a month later and saw an increase in my overpayment amount from $2,300 to $23,000. I went on the website to try to find someone to communicate with. I found nothing. I went to Google and I found about 6 numbers and I started to call. In the Beacon, there was a link to submit an appeal request. No information was given, and I received a confirmation number. And a few days later, the appeal had been canceled. I kept calling. After many phone calls, Beacon troubleshooting, and missed correspondence, I tried to submit a letter to the Board of Appeals. They denied the appeal because they say I failed to call in the original appeal. The system is definitely broken. I logged in today and the overpayment amount is still there in an amount of $23,000. For this reason, I request a favorable report on HB 955. Thank you.
Sorry to hear that, ma'am. I hope we're getting to the bottom of what your issue is. Yeah, very sorry to hear that. Thank you for your testimony. Next would be Tyra Robinson.
Yes, I'm here.
Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Tyra Robinson. I'm an attorney at the Public Justice Center's Workplace Justice Project, and the PJC supports HB 955 and requests a favorable report. For clarity's sake, HB 955 addresses the predetermination investigation phase, meaning that in overpayment recovery process, the state hasn't yet determined that an individual is ineligible and or overpaid. Rather, they're just investigating whether that's the case. The notice by mail edition is all about due process and ensuring that before property is taken from individuals, notice is reasonably calculated to reach the person. That has not been the case thus far. The bill also includes requirements for investigation, which is called predetermination in the bill, and the 30-day response period in 8809C1 of the bill is the time period for a claimant to respond to a notice of overpayment investigation, and that's meant to codify the federal requirement in Unemployment Insurance Program Letter 1-16 that claimants have a reasonable amount of time to be heard when faced with an overpayment investigation. Unemployment insurance program letters are a type of interpretive rule with legal effect from the United States Department of Labor under authority delegated by the Department of Labor Secretary. That 30-day requirement in Unemployment Insurance Letter 0116 requires, before issuing an overpayment determination, state agencies to conduct an investigation and give an individual the meaningful opportunity to participate in the investigation, which hasn't been happening to date. The second unemployment insurance program letter I'll point you to is 04-01, which indicates that because federal law assumes that presumption of continued eligibility will lead to some overpayments, that circumstance is already built into the program. Departments already have a mechanism to pause benefits for 14 days, for example, while they're investigating a situation such as this. And if they're unable to make a timely determination to advise claimants in advance, they should wait to cash any suspected overpayment amount so that they can repay that amount if needed. This helps deter losses to the state's fund and enables the claimant to immediately repay the overpayment. For these reasons, we request a favorable report on HB 955. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Moving on, Robin McKinney.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Robin McKinney, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of the Cash Campaign of Maryland. Cash helps low to moderate income individuals with their finances across the state. More than half of the people that we work with earn less than $20,000, with many earning less than $10,000. We are here in support of House Bill 955, which will help strengthen Marylanders' unemployment system and protect Marylanders from having their benefits negatively affected. Unemployment insurance is a basic and essential safety net for workers who are temporarily unemployed. Unfortunately, the system is not functioning in a manner that protects unemployed Marylanders. The issues with Beacon and the overpayment notices did not come from additional stress from the pandemic. It comes from inadequate and an ineffective infrastructure of our UI system, and it must be solved by strengthening that system. Cash has many clients that have come through that have had major challenges with the unemployment system. Just a summary of what these different types of problems have been. People not able to find their notices in Beacon, or simply not having full access to Beacon because it can only be fully accessed through a computer, not a mobile device. Past notices that had been set through Beacon randomly disappeared. Notice fails to include any evidence of where the department overpaid, and notices did not include any information on how to submit an appeal. I had a 65-year-old worker I was working with in the fall. It took us 4 months to get her back on unemployment after losing it because she worked for one day, caught COVID, and ended up in the hospital for 6 weeks. We finally got her reinstated. She got 1 day of benefits and then ended up with a $5,000 overpaid notice that is now ballooned to $17,000, and we still have not been able to get it received. She hasn't even received the amount of money that she is being claimed has been overpaid, and now it's impacting her taxes because that's what she received on her 1099. For these reasons, we urge a favorable report on House Bill 955.
Thank you very much. The next one is Cornelia Bright Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Greetings, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair Crosby, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of House Bill 955. My name is Cornelia Bright Gordon, and I am an attorney testifying on behalf of Maryland Legal Aid. The bill creates procedures and much needed clarity related to the state's recovery of benefits that have allegedly been overpaid. It will significantly benefit unemployment claimants because now they will receive an explanation and participation in the state's determination process, rather than just a surprise bill with no understanding as to how it was calculated. Maryland Legal Aid submits this testimony at the request of Delegate Jarkudian. The current process where Marylanders are notified of an alleged overpayment lacks the clarity, as I indicated, and also fails to provide due process. Our clients are frequently shocked by hefty, unexpected bills and generally have no recourse to contest the amount and even less understanding as to why it was assessed. Maryland Legal Aid clients frequently are on the quote unquote wrong side of the digital divide. A great many lack internet service, smartphones, and or laptops. Lots of our senior clients are employed and they are entitled to unemployment benefits, but they don't use email. For these clients, House Bill 955 also requires notice to be sent by US mail, which will put them on a parity with people who do not have internet and email access. Legal Aid highly recommends the bill and urges the committee to issue a favorable report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Stephen Cece.
Stephen Cece. Thank you, Chairman Wilson, Vice Chairman, and all the delegates here today. My name is Stephen Cece. I'm with the Unemployed Workers Union. I'm a volunteer organizer. I'm also someone who received unemployment benefits as a hospitality worker. I was a banquet bartender when the pandemic hit. I was laid off at my job at the Westin Hotel. So unemployment benefits helped me, maintain my rent, helped me with, the basic necessities of life. But I'm here to say that we are in favor of this bill, and that definitely unemployment Department of Labor is broken. We have thousands of grievances from members of ours who have submitted grievances basically stating from overpayments to redeterminations to you name it, that have not been addressed by the Department of Labor. Myself, I was denied benefits for a period of time because they claimed that I submitted a fraudulent claim. And what my problem was is that they made everyone do ID verification. I submitted my ID, my state license. I also submitted my social security card, but it was a brand new social security card. And when I uploaded it to the system, to Beacon, I forgot to sign the card. So I was put into the fraud status. Now I'm someone who speaks up, and I'm someone who, advocates. And so I did eventually receive my benefits. But the fact of the matter is that there are thousands of Marylanders. These are people who rely on these benefits, and all suddenly they get overpayment notices and they have no idea how did it come about. They speak to someone from the Department of Labor and said, don't worry about it. And then they go back on Beacon, like others have stated before, and that the bill increases. Also, there is a waiver notice that the Department of Labor provides, but out of the hundreds of people we've submitted waivers, we have only known 2 have actually, those waivers have been accepted. So once again, thank you for this opportunity to testify, and we are in favor of this bill.
Thank you very much, sir. I believe that that's all of the witnesses in that hearing. Is Delegate Cox on the line? Did we cover, I'm sorry, Delegate McComas. I apologize.
Yes.
I believe Delegate McComas is now here. Is that correct, Delegate McComas? Are you ready?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm here.
Outstanding. Thank you very much. You can go ahead.
I want to thank Vice Chair Crosby for coming up and getting me organized. I'm here in support of HB 1164. It authorizes a licensed certified social worker, clinical, LCSWC, to register with the Workers' Compensation Commission as a rehabilitation practitioner for purposes of providing rehabilitation services under workers' compensation law. To qualify for registration, a licensed certified social worker, clinical, must be certified by the State Board of Social Work Examiners. HB 1164 also specifies that if a permanent impairment in a workers' compensation claim involves a behavioral or mental disorder, a licensed certified social worker clinical may perform an evaluation of the mental or behavioral portion of the permanent impairment as specified. In 2005, the Office of Attorney General of Maryland issued an opinion which prompted the proposal and passing of HB 384. HB 384 added to the Labor and Employment Article 9-721, the statutory authority of psychologists to render an opinion as to the behavioral or mental disorders in determining permanent impairment. Since 2005, the Health Occupations Article, Title 19, Section 101, et cetera, expanded the scope of practice for the LCSWC to include only mental and emotional disorders, but the determination but not the determination of impairment. Just as psychologists cannot write prescriptions, LCSWCs are similarly aligned. They cannot write prescriptions. HB 1164 proposes to add the licensed certified social worker clinical to the statute to enable such highly trained personnel to evaluate, diagnose, and treat mental and emotional disorders and conditions and impairments. Please support HB 1164. Just as a side, we were not able to upload a bunch of material that I think will allow the committee to review and kind of see how this has progressed to this point of allowing them to be able to deal with impairments, the social workers. So hopefully you'll be able to access that information. It was emailed to you, and it's my understanding it's embargoed until tomorrow after the hearing. So with that, I'd like to turn it over. I have someone speaking on it, which is Arthur Flack, who is a LCSWC and has worked in the industry for a number of years. So I would like to turn it over to my witness, Mr. Flack, if possible.
Mr. Flack, go ahead.
He's in the library, Mr. Chair, so I think he's not unmuted. So.
When you say the library, ma'am, I don't know what you mean.
Well, he's in a library on a computer at a library to try to testify. So I think he's got to unmute himself, or I don't know if you can do that on your end.
I can ask him to unmute, but he's got to unmute himself.
Can you hear me?
There he is.
Yes, sir.
I'm okay. Okay. All right. This is Arthur Flax. I'm a licensed certified social worker clinical. First of all, I'm registered with the Workers' Compensation Commission, number G0235. And I'd like to thank all the people over the years, including Regina and others down there, who've always been very professional and very cooperative.
Sir, you went back on mute. Mr. Flax, you went back on, there you go, you're good.
Okay. I just wanted to say that I wanted to thank the people at the commission who I know. Licensed certified social worker clinicals are recognized as medical providers under the workers' compensation law, under labor and employment section 9309, etc. But we're not recognized per se as vocational rehabilitation counselors. And this bill in part would allow persons to be able to do that. I'm recognized on the totality of my background. Number two, which is very important, is being able to testify as to permanent impairment. I've had commissioners ask me to be able to testify, and I can't really do that in case on that because we're not included in the statute as to permanent impairment. And our licensing statute includes for an individual licensed as a certified social worker, clinical practice social work also includes supervision of other social workers, the evaluation, diagnosis, and treatment of psychosocial conditions, mental and emotional conditions and impairments, and behavioral health disorders, including substance use disorders, addictive disorders, and mental disorders, as defined in section 7.5-101 of the Health General Article. We have the full scope of practice as does a psychologist.
And sir, I apologize. I know that this is a lot and you don't give us a lot of information, but I have to ask you to wrap it up very quickly.
I am. So that's what I'm trying to get across on the verbal part, is that this is a technical amendment. Basically, we're just asking to be recognized in the statute to be able to do what we're authorized to do under other sections of the law, in which we do, including guardianship, including other areas of certifying disability under TDAP, etc.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much for your presentation, sir.
Thank
And
you.
lastly, we have Scott Tiffin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Scott Tiffin, and I'm here on behalf of the Maryland chapter of the National Association of Social Workers. Arthur Flax definitely knows like the technical parts of this issue much better than I do. So if there's any questions, he's probably better than me to answer. But I just wanted to express the support of the Social Work Association. As already been mentioned, the work this bill will be allowing social workers to do is already in line with the scope of practice. It's currently in statute. So we just think this is kind of just like a clarification and making sure that that scope of practice has already been codified, is carried over into the workers' comp space, and that folks can practice to the fullest extent of their license. So we just asked for a favorable report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Delegate McComas or anyone, I just have a quick question, and that is, how many other states currently do this?
Most, I can try to answer that, sir.
I would just a number would be great.
I don't know the numbers.
Okay,
State.
that's fine. That's fine. Delegate McComas, if nobody knows the number, I'm sure you guys can get back with me. I don't see any other questions on this matter, so I guess we'll go to, thank you guys very much for your presentation. We'll go to our last bill, which is a bill by Delegate Cox. I believe he's here in his
I'm here, Mr. Chair.
underground bunker getting ready to present. Is that you, Delegate Cox?
I'm here, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Outstanding. Loving the background there. It's almost as patriotic as mine. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair Crosby, and honorable members of the committee. House Bill 901, unemployment insurance disqualification exceptions for COVID-19 vaccination, is a simple bill allowing employees to receive their benefits if they lost their job because they were not given an option by their employer to have an exemption from the healthcare mandate put on them as a condition of employment. These were employees who had already been working their jobs for the first year and a half of the COVID lockdowns, providing valuable services to the community and often at the risk of their own health and safety. And then they lost their jobs because of the mandates, and exercising their own right of self-determination and bodily integrity and refusing to take what is still classified by the FDA as having only EUA or emergency use authorization. None of the vaccines currently actually available in the United States are approved for normal use outside of the EUA, even to this day, contrary to misinformation, which means they have not gone through the normal testing procedures as other drugs. But even so, these constituents may have had personal negative experiences with particular health issues and have received their doctor's exemptions, and yet still were denied for some alleged health and safety concern in work, including their religious values, and had those denied. This is a large, widespread issue for many thousands of Marylanders. And the Department of Labor's website in Maryland says that unemployment benefits may be available if you are unemployed through no fault of your own, earn a certain minimum amount of wages before you were unemployed, and you're able to work, available to work, and actively seeking work. And these employees meet each of those criteria. They were employed and working until their employer forced them into an action that violated either their health or religious circumstances. And they were given no alternatives. And so, quoting from the Maryland Department of Website, Section 8, Maryland Department of Labor's website, to establish good cause for quitting, the claimant, quote, must show that the cause for leaving is directly attributable to, arising from, or connected with the conditions of the employment or the actions of the employer. An example given is that an employer worked for the employer, that a claimant would work for an employer for one day. He then quit because he was required to use an extension ladder numerous times a day to disconnect the cable television wiring from the telephone poles. He did not know that lifting ladders would be part of the job, as that was not disclosed when he was hired. He is incapable of lifting objects because of a rotator cuff injury in his shoulders. The employer told him that they could not supply special equipment to assist him. So his quitting is considered good cause and would be therefore eligible for unemployment benefits. And the current situation with the COVID-19 vaccines are similar in nature. These employees were working a new requirement came along that says a vaccine threatened their health or their religion was put upon them, and they were given no special considerations, and their job loss should therefore be considered as having a good cause for leaving the job. In the circumstances where constituents had a religious objection, they also should have been accommodated, and where their civil rights were violated. According to Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, for instance, the term religion includes all aspects of the religious observance and practice as well as belief, unless the employer demonstrates that he's unable to reasonably accommodate an employee's or prospective employees' religious observance or practice without undue hardship on the conduct of the employer's business. Many of these people are being fired or let go, even though they're allowed to work from home. So certainly is not an undue hardship. In May of 2021, Mr. Chair, Maryland's unemployment rate was 6.1% and is still higher than the national average. This has only increased now since so many have been let go because of the forced vaccination situation. According to the U.S. Census Bureau Pulse survey, the category of non-Hispanic Black adults were more represented among the unvaccinated than any other group. So the likelihood that those impacted in the community were minorities is high, and that those wonderful Marylanders would be impacted with their job losses due to these mandates. All Marylanders need help when they're forced out of their job. And these mandates have negatively impacted them, and then they're denied unemployment. So that needs to change. And this is a simple procedure that just says that is good cause and therefore they get their benefits. And I would ask for a favorable report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'm seeing no witnesses, so I do believe that ends that hearing. Mr. Vice Chair, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've hit all of the bills today, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we're good.
Outstanding. Colleagues, thank you very much for your attentiveness on these. I'm sure we'll be having further discussions at another time. I look forward to seeing your smiling faces tomorrow morning on the House floor. Everybody have a good night.